Good morning. All of the recent attention that's been paid to Black Lives Matter and all of the protests that have been going on in the US and here in the UK following the absolutely appalling death of George Floyd at the hands of the police, it's got a lot of people reflecting, it's had a lot of churches reflecting, our own included, on what our response to that is. And as I've been thinking, my reflections have gone to the subject of unconscious bias. That's the things that we don't even realise are affecting our mindset, our thinking, but they're driving our attitudes in ways that we don't even know. Scientists tell us that our brains make instantaneous snap value judgments when we see people. And those judgments are based on the very visible, obvious indicators. People's age, their body weight, their physical attractiveness, their skin colour, their accent, their social background, those kind of things. And we bypass a whole load of logical information in order to make those instinctive snap judgments. And scientists also tell us that where we see people who look the same as us, talk the same as us, and act the same as us, then we can let our guard down, we feel comfortable with those people, and we're okay with that. But conversely, when we see people who look different from us, talk different from us, act different from us, then our guard goes up, there's a mistrust, there's a natural suspicion comes in that says, even we might feel that those people are a threat, or we at least feel they are too different from me. Now, we might have absolutely no logical reason to make those judgments, but we do because they're part of our unconscious bias. Now, Jesus was always calling out unconscious bias wherever he found it. He was always calling out prejudice. All of his teachings are to the religious people, showing them, exposing, hitting a searchlight on where people had an unconscious bias of prejudice. When some people brought to Jesus a woman who had been caught in the act of adultery, and they said she should be stoned, Jesus, his response was to pause. It says he stooped down and wrote on the ground. And maybe he was just giving them a moment to think past their snap judgment and say, hey, you caught her in the act of adultery. Well, that takes two. Presumably you caught them both in the act of adultery. So where's the guy? And there's a snap judgment been made without thinking. And Jesus is always doing things like this and saying, look, you might be very good at dealing with other people's problems and being able to identify what's going on in other people, but you might not be aware that you've got a huge problem yourself. You're good at picking the speck out of your brother's eye, but didn't you realise you've got a plank in your own? Let's call it a plank. And he called it out. Jeremiah 17 verse 9 says this. It says, the human heart is deceitful above all things and desperately wicked. Now that is not a good combination, because that means we can be wicked, but because we're deceitful, we can tell ourselves that we're absolutely fine. The verse that follows that, the heart is deceitful and desperately wicked, who can know it? Says, I, the Lord, search the heart. God can show us what we can't see ourselves, what has gone under our radar, our unconscious biases and prejudices, things that we would never dream that we would have, and yet we might be guilty of them. And I think that this is a great time to be able to reflect and ask the Lord, will you just dig out, shine a searchlight, Lord, on my unconscious biases, so that I can truly treat everyone equally, see in everyone the image of God and believe that everyone who is in Christ is equally loved, equally valuable before you. That's my exhortation and encouragement for you today. Why don't you just do that? See what the Lord shows up in your life. God bless you.